Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to Washington State DNR, to Ben Thompson and Daria for having us give this presentation. Today, Lance Davison and I are going to be talking about pathways to a vibrant urban forestry program. And mainly what we're going to focus on is strategic partnerships and funding solutions.
Thank you very much, Phil. So I get the honor of introducing Phil. And again, yes, thank you, Ben and Daria, for the opportunity. And thank you all for joining us today. So I've known Phil for many years. Phil is the former president of the Pacific Northwest chapter of ISA. He is the urban forester for City of Snoqualmie. And City of Snoqualmie is a unique place where he gets to do everything from be a climbing arborist to advance the future of the program and present to City Council and do all those fun planning things as well. So Phil is a dynamic human being that I enjoy working with, and he's also an environmental educator, if you didn't know that. So I'm looking forward to presenting with Phil today.
Likewise, Lance, looking forward to presenting with you. So everyone, this is Lance Davison, who's the principal consultant of the Keystone Concept. And what that really means, the Keystone Concept is, Lance is that keystone that brings many other pieces together and gets them working together, which is a lot of what he's done for us in this project. Lance is a very humble guy, and some things he won't tell you is that he used to chair the National Urban and Community Forestry Advisory Council, which is responsible for recommending funding to the states, including to Washington DNR. And so Lance has volunteered up to the national and federal levels to advance urban forestry, and we're really lucky to have him be part of this project. All right, Lance, here we go. So I'll start with these first few slides, and this is just some background on Snoqualmie and its urban forestry program. Image on the top left is when clearing and grading basically first started for the development of Snoqualmie Ridge in 1998. At that time, Snoqualmie was a very small city, a logging town by the Snoqualmie River, and then has gone through a couple of decades of extraordinary growth. And the bottom right image is of Snoqualmie Ridge as it is today, almost completely built out. So in that time, the population of Snoqualmie has gone up tenfold. And for much of that period, Snoqualmie was the fastest growing city in Washington State. This image from drone photography as part of our project last year shows that Snoqualmie, as a master plan development, prioritized the retention of native forest remnants, also the planting of street trees and the planting of trees in parks. So we're very fortunate in Snoqualmie to have a very high canopy cover level. So we have 46.9% canopy cover in the city, which is rather good.
And I might segue there as well, Phil. This is a great look that we were able to use in our report that looks at how green infrastructure is weaved throughout the Snoqualmie Ridge development. And it's unique. I used to work for the Washington DNR managing Tiger Mountain, and our office was in the Snoqualmie area to watch this place grow. And one thing that I think Washington State has that's unique and valuable is your Growth Management Act. And that is very important to help make sure that you're not only preserving these lands and preserving some forests for people to live in, but it also brings some unique challenges in those areas where you kept those green belts. And what does that mean for management of your urban forest where those trees aren't maybe ready for the wind events that might have just happened, and what that means. So it's a unique city. It's a fun place to work, and it provides Phil with some unique challenges, but also some great opportunities in managing their urban forest.
Couldn't agree more. So just to give you all a snapshot of the history of this program. So by 2009, the city had, many retained native forest remnants. Thousands of street and park trees had been planted, but it really didn't have an urban forestry program. At that time, there was no tree ordinance, no kind of resource inventories, no certified arborists on staff. And so in 2010, the program really began, and it began with becoming a Tree City USA, writing a tree ordinance, and hiring of the city's first certified arborist. It happened to be me. So some other things to share. In my my sort of early path as an urban forester, some really useful teaching that came actually from Washington State DNR was about how you kind of lay the foundations for an urban forestry program. And I certainly didn't know any better at that time, so I followed the advice that I was given, and we developed these components or foundational pieces. So we worked on a street tree inventory, which took 3 separate iterations of work to complete over a 5-year period. We had a canopy cover assessment done, and then we also engaged in urban forest strategic planning. All 3 of those were supported by Washington State DNR, by the urban and community forestry grants, and that was really useful to us and helped us along the way. Program development continued in the latter half of that period, with starting to manage our forest land more and working together with KCD, King Conservation District that is, and also Forterra to build the Green Snoqualmie Partnership and join the Green Cities Network. So from 2017 onwards, we've been starting to manage our forest land. And again, Washington DNR supported this effort. However, there was a missing piece, and it was a really important one. It was something that was identified in our urban forest strategic plan, and that is the necessity for a stable and reliable funding source for the program. The program, for most of its history, has been funded by general fund and has been subject to some large fluctuations as economic times have changed. And you'll see there, you may not be able to see the numbers, but you'll see the red on that image, that budget graph. And basically, we saw some major reductions in the last biennium. And so this is a concern, and we realized a real foundational piece for the program that we needed to build towards. And we did identify, or the Urban Forest Strategic Plan identified that stormwater funding, the utility funding was a good option. So we worked on that, and it's taken some time, and we made an initial case in 2017 for the 2018-19 biennial budget. That year, mainly Nicole Sanders, our senior planner, did some work. We got the stormwater utility ordinance updated to include urban forestry as a legitimate place to spend stormwater funding. We got a program comparison done by Herrera Consultants, which looked at different urban forestry programs in Washington State and how they use stormwater utility funding. And we did an in-house iTree eco study that somewhat demonstrated the stormwater benefit of Snoqualmie's urban forest. However, our goal, which was to get the entire program funded through the source, failed. We didn't quite have enough information on the resource assessment side, and we couldn't quite demonstrate the impact that the city's trees had on stormwater. And that's where Lance comes in.
Thank you very much, Phil. So yes, in 2019, King Conservation District approached us. Phil had talked to them about the challenges and the opportunities that he had ahead of him. And KCD approached us and said, hey, we know that your team with Equilibrium Economics and Ecosystem Sciences has done ecosystem service work before. We did some work in the South Platte of Colorado. We've done some work with King Conservation District. And so they said, hey, what could we maybe do for Phil to help them get to this next level? And so we brought in our team and put together a proposal. And what you'll notice is that we are very collaborative, as Phil said before. We don't just come in with our ideas and create a report that then moves on and we just hand it to City of Snoqualmie and our client partner. We're going to develop a very collaborative vision. So we came in with our partners, we looked at the funding opportunities, and we laid out a plan basically with Phil for some shared success. And you'll see throughout this whole presentation the threads of the Washington DNR funding and support as well. So Phil and I, when we were putting together this presentation, we're thinking back, and as we all know, 2020 has been an amazing whirlwind of ups and downs. And believe it or not, we executed our contract in January of 2020. And so when we executed that contract, we came on board, and the first thing that we did with our team was said, okay, Phil, who can you have engaged? We don't want to work just with you. Well, luckily, Phil had the same vision. So not only did we have the forestry department, we had the stormwater engineer in our meetings, we had the planning department in our meetings, and the public works department. And so we basically laid out the process that we were going to do. What we do is we come in and we take all the GIS data that we can mine from City of Snoqualmie. Luckily, they had some good data that was produced by Planet Geo years ago that provided that solid foundation to look at the land cover. And then we overlay on the ecosystem services assessment, which is completed by Equilibrium Economics. And they take all the land cover data and come up with values based off the land cover for ecosystem services. Now they can do 21 different ecosystem services when we do a project like this. And so once we'd laid out the whole process with Phil and his team, we said, okay, we'll definitely do stormwater. That's within the scope. Are you interested in anything else? And they have a real progressive climate vision at City of Snoqualmie. So they said, hey, I think we can find some funding to add water quality that will help have a more solid argument and foundation for our stormwater value, but also let's look at carbon. So we were able to add on a few ecosystem service values on top of that. And then we went through, completed our whole assessment, and in June, we actually published the report. Highly graphic report. If you haven't seen it, we'll give you a look to see that. And this was a unique spot because we'd followed the plan, we'd have everybody involved, and we felt really good about it. And Phil and his supervisor with Parks and Public Works said, hey, let's float this by our leadership, see what they think about it. And they were very impressed, which is good. But luckily, they wanted a little more fine detail to be able to present to city leadership the documentation that shows the value of your stormwater infrastructure, but also shows you that it's valuable to use fees to pay for it. So we went back to the drawing board and created 3 different case studies focused on key areas: City of Snoqualmie at the ridge, the right-of-way only, and City of Snoqualmie in the valley. And that's what we came up with, the final report that helped Phil find success in funding for his program.
So just segueing off that, Lance, this is the report that you developed for us, and it really did take those final case studies to give the kind of information that was needed for City Council to feel comfortable making this funding switch. And one thing that we want to call out is, you know, in the last biennial budget, street tree replacement was funded at $0, and for this upcoming biennium, including this year, 2021, it's at $400,000. So that's a big win for the city's urban forest. And want to just take a moment to reflect on some of the conclusions we drew at the end of the project, because it was a big success for us. It was a very tough budget year, and as I described, we've seen the funding go up and down for the program. So just our reflections on what had this be successful were, first of all, you have to have the right people. That's both people in-house and your consultant team and your partners as well. And that does involve enlarging your concept of teams. So we realized, and Lance helped me to realize, that many people had to be involved in very strategic ways to make sure that we got to the end result we wanted to. And we mentioned some of those collaborators, but I'll also mention that, so King Conservation District were a major part of this. All of the other program development work we'd done was a major part of this, and you'll see that here as well. So basically, all of those foundational pieces of this program and the resource assessments we had done enabled Lance and his team to accomplish what they did in the report. If we hadn't had those resource assessments, the whole process would have taken a much longer period. It would have cost more, and it would have been difficult to do in this year. And then the last thing I'll mention is we thought we had finished in June of last year, and we realized that we hadn't. We had more work to do. And so we had to turn something around very quickly, and we had to be nimble, which is sometimes difficult in a municipal organization. But we managed to do that, and that ultimately is what got us to the end and to the result we wanted. And do you want to share anything here, Lance?
You know, I think it's all about the journey, and that you have strong relationships with your partners. Phil captures it really well right there. You bring in the right people, but we've got to be able to really share and learn and find out what it is that your leadership is looking for, and be willing to adapt and evolve as you go throughout your project. So you've got to have sound science, you need to have good data, and then you need to have those relationships to really deliver at home, which we were able to do here.
Well, folks, thank you very much for listening, and we hope that we'll be able to answer some of your questions at this point. And so we'll be on for a while, and happy to entertain any questions that you have. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Washington DNR, for the opportunity.